So, I've got four more skeleton kits to build. I've got a Neanderthal that has both a figure and the skeleton. I've got a big Tyrannosaurus Rex. I've got a Bandai Triceratops in Limex. More on that in a minute. And I've got this one here. This is the Bandai Tyrannosaurus in Limex. I bought this one because I thought I was missing a part off the other one that I built previously. So it turns out that I was not missing a part. So I have a whole nother one of these to build because I like things in sets. I also have another Tyrannosaurus to build. So, actually, it's over here. So, we're going to do these. And I'm going to benefit from my past experience in building this guy here. So, let's get on into it. So let's go ahead and get on into this guy here. So normally there are bands that go across the box instead of shrink wrap. I don't know why they do that, but they do. Now this one has been opened before, but it's not been built, and most everything is still in the sprues. So we have our instructions here. And Bandai tends to do pretty good with their instructions. You've got an informational sheet here, and here are the instructions. So the material is called Limex, and it's kind of a tricky material. It falls off the sprues or the runners easily, and it can break fairly easily. So I'm going to have to be careful with it. There's not much to the kit. This is pretty much it. We've got our base here. And then there are a couple of parts that were loose in here, and the spinal cord, a couple of runners here. So not much to it. The plastic, if you ever handle these, the plastic feels like dry soap. That's the closest thing I can come to express it. So yeah, I don't know about Limex. Was not happy with it on the last build, and I don't think I'm going to be happy with it on this one, but we're just going to persevere. As is my usual process, I'm going to clean these parts before assembly, and the reason for cleaning the parts is because there's a release agent used in the injection molding process, and if you don't remove that, it could interfere with your paint job. My usual process is to first squirt them down with Windex, wipe that off, and then squirt it down with water and then wipe it off. Now, I have also used a Windex water bath where I put it in a bucket or a little shallow container, shake it up, and then move it to another little shallow container of water, shake that up, and that also seems to work. Step one is the head. It's got two halves to the skull and a center section and a jaw. Now, you could do this as a snap together kit, but I'm using Zap-A-Gap along with Insta-Set Accelerator. Unfortunately, the Limex does not seem to work well with normal model cement, so I'm having to do it this way. Also, a quick note, the parts almost fall off the runners. There's very little force that you have to use to get them away from the runners. They, like I said, they almost fall off. Step 2 probably should have been broken down into multiple steps. It's the spinal cord, rib cage, and hips, and I guess the joints that the arms go into. And you know, the Limex, the parts are very easy to break, and I ran into that. So I've got some pretty ugly super gluing going on there, I'm ashamed to say. Step 3 is just the neck, and it's only 2 pieces, which is really strange considering how many pieces were in step 2. And this was only 2 pieces. Step 4 was simply to connect the neck, head, and spinal cord together. That went pretty quick. Step 5 are the legs and arms, and for the most part I chose not to use super glue on most of these parts. I did make the mistake of super gluing one of the ball joints and then quickly recognized the error of my ways. The rest of the legs I did not super glue. So you assemble the legs and then put them into the ball joints in the body. The arms are similar. They have little ball joints in the on the ends of them. I did decide to super glue those once I had it in place because of some problems I had with the earlier assembly of the chest. I didn't know or didn't think that they were going to stay in by themselves, so I went ahead and super glued those once I had them in a position I was happy with. So I was going through my footage of the build, and I realized I did not get to this step. This is step 6, which is the tail section here. I somehow did not get footage of that. I don't know what happened. I'm sure it's all my fault because I was the one doing the footage. So I'm going to talk about it real quick. So it's just 2 parts. It's this part here and this here. And this has one little joint that it's just, you could do it as a snap-in. And I just glued that down with super glue. And then the tail can just snap in. And originally I wasn't going to do anything with it, but when I stood it up, it drooped. So I also super glued this connection. So that's really it. There's not much. It's just 2 parts in that particular assembly, but somehow I missed shooting that, and so I'm covering it here now. On with the rest of the build. Step 7 is to attach the model to the base, which there are a couple of little slots in the base that the feet go into, so it's pretty straightforward. While doing that, I noticed that the tails seem kind of droopy, so I super glued into the position that I wanted. I did not glue the model into the base, one, because it's pretty secure connection, but also I'm going to be priming and painting this, and so I need to be able to remove it from the base at least long enough to get the paint job done. Alright, so the assembly is done. It did take a lot more super glue than I would have liked, and kind of super glue can be messy, and it was kind of messy. Not happy about that. I may have gotten a little bit in a rush too, but you know, there are some parts of this that just broke off. I do not like the Limex material. Yeah, I don't. For that reason, because the parts break easy. So, but it's at least assembled. I'm going to prime it and figure out a paint job for it. I started off by using Tamiya Gray Fine Surface Primer, and for models that are molded in white plastic, I like to use a gray so that I can, if there are any areas that aren't getting good coverage, they'll stand out. Usually for skeletons, I like to use a very thin first base coat. Sometimes I'll use a second. On this one, I didn't think that I needed it, but sometimes I do. Now, for this base coat, I used Vallejo Model Color Pale Sand mixed with Vallejo Model Color Leather Brown. So I mixed up a very thin wash, almost a wash of the paint, and then went over it. And once that was dry enough, I then hit it with some Tamiya flat clear. And the reason to do that is sometimes I find that if you don't do that as you're going over with your next coat, the water will wash away some of the previous coat. So the flat clear helps prevent that. Next, I started to do a wash, a very, very thin wash, to get into all the nooks and crevices, and do the shadows and the contrasting with the light tones. I started with Vallejo Model Color Camouflage Black Brown, and found that it wasn't quite dark enough, so I added to it the Vallejo Model Color Black, and that gave me the right shade. For the highlights, I did a mix of Vallejo Model Color Ivory, Vallejo Model Color Mahogany Brown, and Vallejo Model Color Pale Sand. So I actually did two highlight coats. The first one was more the mahogany brown, and it didn't quite pop the way I liked, so I went back and added some more ivory, a little bit of the pale sand, but mostly a heavier squirt of the ivory, and that got me to where I needed to be. Alright, so the Bandai Limex Tyrannosaurus skeleton is done. And I will be honest, I was a little bit rushed on this because the last time I built this, it wasn't all that fun, and this time wasn't much fun either. It's not a horrible kit. The problem is the Limex material. Alright, it breaks easy. I had parts here that broke, and your parts should not break that easily. So, but it's done. I got it painted up. Pretty pleased with the paint job. So, I'm going to call this complete. I've got, let's see, the Bandai Triceratops, a large ESA link, I think that's who it is. It's a puzzle model of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and it's, I think, 24 inches tall or 24 inches long. It's big. And then after that, Neanderthal skeleton, as well as a figure, and that should complete the skeleton theme, and then I'm going to move on to something else. But anyway, one more time, here it is, the Bandai Tyrannosaurus skeleton in Limex. They only made 2 kits that I know of, and then they stopped using Limex, which is probably a good idea. All right, stick around, more adventures to come.